or streaming and the Discord, like, yeah, you lose quality. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I've got control. I've got power. Even though Connie's behind the scenes right now with all the little buttons, they could cut the cord at any moment, friends. So I got to be quick. I've got to talk to you. I've got something that I want to speak with you about, and it's what do you do? Improv and ensemble dynamics. I want to talk to you about this subject because I really, really find this stuff interesting. Uh, those of you who don't know, I'm Erica, she, her pronouns. I play Vinox Scherzo in Transplanar RPG. And if you don't know, I've been a professional theater artist since I was 16 years old. I went to school in my undergrad. I studied performance. I have a BFA in theater performance. I went to clown school, this little place called Del Arte International School of Physical Theater in Blue Lake, California. And I have worked from Los Angeles, Portland, done work in Kentucky, and here around the Minneapolis area. I've worked. I have created original work. I have solo clown shows. I have this, that, or the other. Needless to say, I have a lot of experience. And in that time, I've done workshops, I've taught acting classes, I've participated in a number of workshops and classes with different modalities of how do you get to this thing. And so I feel like I have a lot to share, and it's a subject that I love greatly. So, for the next bit, we're going to talk about all sorts of things. We're going to talk about improv, improvisation, some of the approaches that I personally like to think about, and also how you frame that in a group. You know, you're sitting at a table. This is all, I'm going to speak from the perspective of an actor and as someone doing tabletop RPG. And I just want to also make this clear that in creating this, it's really hard to codify some elements into like singular ideas when really it all kind of swirls itself around in a giant sphere of different technique and ability. So I just want you to know that um, while I am breaking things down, I'm not saying necessarily one of these things is greater or better than the rest, or that there aren't other methodologies to this madness. I'm speaking mostly from my own perspective of what I really enjoy. So that being said, let's hop into this, right? So if we're talking about improv, you first have to like ask yourself, what is improv? And really, when you think about improv, it's you're making stuff up on the fly. Who knows what's going to happen? You know, there's really like three forms of improv out there. Um, and I'll talk about a little bit each one because some are more improv-y than others. And if you're really interested in this stuff, I'm trying to give also like some real life examples, and at times I may also cite transplanar moments or situations, particularly with my character V, just as a way to supplement the material. So when I think of improv, I think of like sort of three schools of thought. There's more sketch-based comedy, and, you know, that's kind of in the realm of Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live is pretty scripted, but there are improv troupes where the focus is about creating the scene. It's about learning to work together to making a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that's really the focus, and these groups make it up on the spot, but they have so much training together that they're able to sort of weave ideas that maybe are thrown from the audience or other ensemble mates in the moment, and they're able to weave these all together in a way that is cohesive. Like you feel like something has happened. You've watched, there was something happened, and then it resolved itself. That's like the sketch based improv. Then from there, you can get into more like character based improv, where it's more about the characters you're creating and setting them in scenes together and letting the chaos happen. You know, you can think about that in shows like Mad TV, which things are written, but there is more of a focus on the characters. The actors performing are creating these very eccentric, weird, bigger than life characters and setting them in situations and seeing what happens. Now, there are like improv groups that like this is what they do. Actors sort of accumulate characters that then at shows like they know they can throw this character on, do a scene together against these other characters, and you have a scene. An example of this would be like the Groundlings in LA, which I've seen performance from there. Uh, Paul Rubens, who created Pee Wee Herman, came from the Groundlings. Um, Phil Hartman, and some other sort of actors who, when you think about actors who create really big characters, they come from like the Groundlings school of thought. That's like one other form of improv. And then we have a form of improv that's like straight up theater games. It's, whose line is it anyway? The audience throws some suggestions out. There are like games that the audience knows and like recognizes because they've watched so many episodes. And the fun is watching these actors who are very good at what they do be thrown all these strange circumstances and create scenes on the fly using whatever container, which is the game that they're playing, to create something that's funny, makes us laugh, ha ha ha. Now, improv doesn't have to be funny. It can be serious. You can use improv at any time. However, we tend to think of it, right, as funny, hilarious scenes. I think it behooves any performer in the improv. There's that word behoove. I know we used it a lot on Saturday. Behoove. It behooves performers not to think like I'm not trying to get the laughs. Um, I'm simply trying to be honest and true to both the character, the scene, and whatever circumstances get thrown our way. Like, you can take all three elements of those types of improv and throw them together, and I think you'll get yourself a nice stew of what improv can accomplish. I think those three types of improv all steal or borrow from each other in different ways, and that's okay. There's different schools of thought that emphasize different elements a little bit more than maybe another group. So that's like the types of improv. And the first rule of improv class, as we all know, is to say yes and. It's the literally anytime you take an improv class, 90% of the time, the first thing the teacher will say to you is improv is all about saying yes and. What does that mean? Well, it means that someone in the scene makes a proposal. This is what the scene is. I'm here, I'm at the store shopping for something. Your job is to come in as the next person and say yes and. Okay, so we're at the store and I need kitty litter. Okay, well, then the other person might be like, okay, we're in a store, we're looking for kitty litter. Oh my gosh, we're out of kitty litter. And this goes back and forth, and you're creating scene work by just yes anding and making problems for each other and having to solve problems with each other. If you enter a scene, an improv scene, with a no attitude, it's just like, we're in a store. No, we're not. We're not at all. We're not in the store. What do you mean? Okay, we're at a rock concert? Nah. Nope. Not at a rock concert. You kill the scene right then and there. There's nowhere to go. So you have to start with yes and. And by doing so, you're supporting one another, right? It's all about supporting one another. Some people find improv to be very scary, but I have found in doing a lot of improv that those communities typically are very supportive. There's no such thing as like a bad choice. It's simply making a choice, and then we go from there, and we go from there. And it's the same at your tabletop RPG table. If you're sitting there and someone makes a choice at the table, you'll kill the energy of the table. If you're just like, no, that's not what we do. No, no, we're not. You didn't just rob that person. V, you didn't do that. Oh, well, I thought I just did. No, we're not doing that. Okay, fine. You know what? I'm taking my D20 and I'm heading out of here because this isn't fun anymore. Now, that doesn't happen because we're supportive of one another. We take each other's ideas and we go bigger, and that's some of the fun I have at the Transplanar table is I know I can trust these folks. If I make a proposal, they're going to take it and they're going to yes and it, Connie throws Sievert at V, and V decides to burn down, Sievert's office. Connie rolls with that. Okay, well, the office is on fire. We're gonna throw a desk out the window and hit Dewey's sword, and it's gonna gain sentience. Wait, my sword has sentience? Yes. And now it thinks you're its father. Oh dear. Well, we're rolling with it, right? And sooner as it's that easy that suddenly when a bunch of big choices are happening that are creating wild circumstances for us to play with. You can only do this though if you're really good at listening. Um, can I tell you a secret about what my theater training was? It was 2 years of listening to each other. And what do I mean by that? Is we would play what's called the repetition exercise. The repetition exercise where I'd be sitting with you here like this, right? We'd be staring at each other. And the rule is you can't do anything unless it comes from your partner. So you're looking at each other. We're looking, we're in silence. This is awkward. This is vulnerable. And suddenly you twitch and you're like, I can then say, you twitched. And the person has to repeat, I twitched. And then I said, yeah, you twitched. Back and forth. You twitch, I twitch, blah, 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 blah. I twitch, 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 twitch. This is not a plug for twitch.tv, I swear. But you can't say the next thing until something happens where maybe someone laughs or someone gets angry. And then you can be like, oh, you're getting angry. Yes, I'm getting angry. And this goes on and on and on ad infinitum until you get to a place where you can repeat and not actually do repetition, but you can actually respond to each other. Like you're working on a poem. You're very observant. You're kind of annoyed with me. Oh, you're Captain Obvious, aren't you? And immediately there's no more repetition, but everything you're doing is coming from the other person. This was what I was taught for like literally 2 years. Imagine 4 semesters of your collegiate career just being this. Except then we would do it like one of you leaves the room and gets real angry and walks into the room for whatever imagined circumstances. And then you just listen to each other. And you're improvising using this repetition container to do a scene. You didn't have any dialogue. Sometimes you have dialogue. Who knows? But it all stems from listening. And when you are improvising, there's really like sort of 2 schools of like, there are 2 things that at least I balance while I am improvising with another person. One is listening to the other person. And while I'm also listening to the other person, I have to know what do I want in this scene? You know, I had a class called games when I went to clown school. It's called games. And, you know, it was kind of like, oh, yeah, playing Zip Zap Zop, playing tag, playing this. But it was more than just that. It was using theater games to teach you the skill of going very, very hard for your objective in a scene, like for real. You're not faking trying to tag someone, you're actually trying to tag someone. And then clocking for yourself what is your response and what are the rules of the game and how do you respond? Are you someone who likes to try to cheat the rules? Are you someone who likes to bend the rules? Are you someone who's like, no, that's the rules and we are following it? You learn about yourself, how you play games. And you can take a lot of that onto the stage with you. And what I personally look for from another actor is someone who is willing to play the game. And I don't always know what the game is in a scene until we're actually playing it, especially in an improvised setting. So one of the first things you do is find the game that you're trying to play, and you can figure that out by listening. Yes, we have to listen to each other, and also we have to do it by knowing what are the objectives in the scene. Now, as an actor, there are 3 levels of objective. There is the super objective, which is what you want, what your character wants, or what you want by the end of the play. This is what you're searching for. You know, for V at the beginning of the campaign, it was, I want to find out what's going on so that I can get rich quick off of it. Then there's the objective. What does your character want in this particular scene that will get them towards their super objective? And then there are tactics. Tactics are the moment-to-moment actions you are taking to try to get what you want to accomplish your objective so that you can get your super objective. And the tactics is where the fun happens. That is the moment to moment work where we're working with each other. That's the moment where V is like deciding, you know what, my tactic here, I'm gonna flame on this entire office that belongs to Sievert. I'm gonna destroy everything in this room that belongs to him. At least I assume it belonged to him. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was an innocent office that didn't have it coming, chat. Who knows? Maybe. But these 3 levels are at play in the improvisation. You have to know what you want to ground your work in some semblance of reality. Otherwise, you might just be doing rando things here and there that don't make a lot of sense, that just feel really off and random and is not telling a story, you know? And there is a type of improv that is all about making random choices. I don't find it very satisfying, and I think in the terms of storytelling, it's not that satisfying. If you're trying to tell a story, you have to find the game, you have to know what you want, and it can change. I will say that V's super objective in the first arc is nowhere near what her objective is now halfway through, well, actually like 3/4 of the way through arc 4, you know? You're allowed, especially in the tabletop realm, for your super objective to morph and change and grow and evolve. And that leads to your character growing and evolving and becoming a richer character. And I think it's also something to keep in mind with written scripted work is what does your character want overall? Does it change at all anyone to play? These are things like if I have a script, I am marking out in the script. It's something to keep in mind at least. Um, I think it's really important in tabletop RPG to also think about objectives, super objectives in 3 circles. There is what do I want as a player or as an actor? What am I trying to express? What am I interested in artistically? What do I want to say as an artist, as a human being in this realm? There's that objective. And that is like informs a lot of my choices that I made. Why did I make V? Why did I make V the way I made V? What am I interested in by portraying someone like V? That is one set of wants. Then there are the wants of what my character wants. And yeah, that's the stuff of like what V wanted at the beginning of the campaign and how it might have evolved to now. And then there's also this third circle, it's the giant circle. And in terms of a context of tabletop RPG, I would say that that is what does the table want? And that's when you get to session 0 and you're making agreements and lines and veils and you're trying to figure things out. There's that. But then there's also, and I see this more as an actor, what does the audience want? And I think that kind of goes in the same realm of what the table wants. I will say in my clown work, it is very important to be aware of what the audience wants, particularly in comedic timing. Your timing will change every single night for the same joke based on your audience because the audience will have different expectations and desires. There's times where your audience, you need to slow the joke down a little. And that's not making any comments on the audience. It's just the rhythm of the audience. They need you to slow down. Sometimes the audience needs you to speed up. Sometimes they need you to, and then hit the thing. Like they need that little stutter step. You only figure that out by listening really intensely. You know, an audience that comes to see a comedy, they have the expectations of wanting to laugh. You know, what does Transplanar's audience want to see? They want to see some queer, trans, person of color led D&D 5th edition homebrewed actual play set in a dark, grim fantasy world, you know, so on and so forth. Like that's the expectations. And we don't want to pander to those wants of the audience, but I think it's important that we understand them. We have to at least carry them somewhat in the very, very back of our brain that they exist. So these are the super objectives. Or these are all the different layers of objectives. And once you have all those, it becomes a lot easier, I feel, to then improvise your character in them. If I go into a scene, you know, if I go into, I guess, using the scene with Sievert back in arc 1, you know, Connie ended a session, V walking into a room, and there's Sievert. And I was disguised, V was disguised as Ronnie. And knowing V's desires to get revenge on Sievert, which was part of her one of her super objectives. She had a few. Um, it was important to me to then drop this guy's self and reveal that I'm V. I've gotten into Sievert's domain, and now it's time to. I've been waiting for this moment for years, 7 years. It's time to drop this, and all that choice came from the fact that I knew what V wants. I knew this moment V was waiting for. Now that she's here, she cannot allow herself to do anything else but to confront Sievert. There's no way she was going to slow play this or stay disguised and try to get under it. No, this is what she's been waiting for a long, long time. And that was like what led to, in the moment, making some choices, improvising what actions were happening there, and working with Connie, listening to each other, a lot of listening to make that type of moment happen. And so to make gripping drama, you then have to also understand conflict. Having your characters have conflicting objectives is what leads to drama. I know I saw a comment about talking more about dramatic improv, and whether it's dramatic or comedic, you have to have a conflict in a scene. And this also goes a little bit into the dynamics of a scene. What makes a scene is we have like an introduction to the circumstances. We have to have a problem, and then it complications, it reaches to a climax, and then it wraps itself up. This is like the typical textbook arc of a scene. And there's three types of conflict, like person versus person, which is like Batman versus Joker. Let's say it could be V versus Sievert, Dewey versus the Myriad, whatever. It could be person versus nature, which is like movies like Castaway with Tom Hanks, where he gets like stranded on an island, and the drama is him literally surviving in nature. And then there's person versus self, which is not a conflict you always see as readily. I think that exists though in Transplanar. I think in the work so far, I think all four PCs, in terms of Dewey, Manaya, V, and Oka, have conflicts within themselves. My favorite example, though, of person versus self is Hamlet. A teacher, a professor in college said Hamlet is 2.5 hours of a guy trying to figure out what he's going to do. And then he finally does it, and everyone dies. And that's the end of the play. But it was literally, you just sat through 2 hours of him being like, do I kill my uncle? Do I not kill my uncle? Well, maybe I need some proof first. Well, I'm going to put on this play and watch him. Okay, well, I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to treat my girlfriend like crap. Oh, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to confront my uncle. I'm going to do it. And then everyone dies. That could be one way. That's one type of conflict of person versus self. Now, when you do that, though, so you have to know what your character wants. You have to listen. And then hopefully, if you've all done some good work together, you will find moments where your characters will conflict. This is a little bit of a spoiler from this past. I'll get vague, but V made a choice. Someone in the party got mad at V for making the choice, and we had this dynamic tension of them fighting over the choice that V made, and it led to some good drama. For weeks, Dewey and Rev have had a thing, and that finally boiled over into some tension because there was clearly some type of conflict. Even if we, the audience, don't quite know what that conflict is or what's happening, we still sense something is happening because they're playing actions. You have to find actions, ways of expressing what you want or what the conflict is for the audience to understand what is happening. And that was going on. And it was done very well. And then a good thing for me, at least, is a good understanding of what is called status and status play. I learned this at clown school, is understanding what your status is at the table, both as a player and a character. Let's say you're in a 3-person scene. There's the 1, the 2, and the 3. The 1 is the person in charge. They're the leader. They're the ones calling all the shots. The 3rd is the bottom on the ladder, has no input whatsoever into the conflict, is just there to follow orders. And the number 2 is the middle person trying to balance what the 1 wants with also the 3 probably screwing up what the 1 wants. And, it's like the 1 tells the 2 tells the 3 does something wrong, incorrect, tells number 2 has to go back to 1, relay the information, and then there's an exchange. And what we love to see as an audience is we love to see that the status can change and be fluid. We love to see that the people in the scene, that the 1, in fighting with the 2 and the 3 suddenly becomes the 3. It's very clear that they're the bottom person on the rung, and the 3 is suddenly the 1. Suddenly, what? The 3 is like the one calling the shots. And that's the deal. We love to see it. So if you recognize your status at the table, you can know, oh, I'm kind of like the 2 or the 3. This person at the table likes to be the 1. They like to be the first voice. They like to say things first. They like to throw out ideas first. And the 2s and the 3s figure stuff out from there. And if there's a 4th, they might have something to add, but it's not quite, and finding the ways in which you usurp each other. Where's the moment where maybe V feels really compelled in this moment to become the 1? Like, no, I feel very passionate about this. I need to do this. And suddenly V jumps into the 1 spot. And that's the fun. That's the play. So all of these from status to objectives to listening, are the elements where, if you do them, you can create really engaging play that is improvised. I see we do have some questions, and I want to get to some of these questions before I get yanked, before the poll comes and pulls me off here. So, what is V's super objective going into the final episodes of Arc 4 and into the back half of the entire main campaign? Oh dear. Oh dear. And then what are the tactics she's utilizing now that are similar and different? So V has had her entire world shifted recently, right? And where in the first arc, she was looking to learn information so that she could get ahead and maybe make a profit. She's now in a place as both a paragon and someone who, in arc 3 went through a lot of internal drama, had to confront a lot of parts of herself, and now understanding some of the truth bombs of like what paragons are going to have to do. V's in a place now where she is kind of, she has to, she knows her time is short. She knows that she is no longer doing this. She's on borrowed time. That's the best way to say it. She's on borrowed time. And so she is figuring out what she needs to take care of before it's time for time. Kind of that world. Sorry, I had a thing floating in front of me, some dust, and it was bothering me. And what I will say about the tactics, a lot of the tactics have stayed the same. V getting to go to the gambling parlor and do all this, she has had to use all of the tools she learned from her upbringing up through the campaign that she used, and she's still trying to rip people off, like at the betting parlor. She's still having to engage in the sort of seedy underbelly that she's used to. So it's actually interesting to see how she uses the same set of tools of manipulation and all this type of stuff to get new objectives, but also throw on top of that maybe a little more genuine interactions, because also at this point she trusts the party more than she did in the first arc, right? So her relationships and what she's allowing to share and the way she allows herself to be vulnerable both to Rev and to the party is changing. So she is enriching what she normally does with new tactics that involve, telling the truth, being open and honest, or, but also knowing that she has in her back pocket lying, cheating, manipulating. All of those things are still there. Let's see. What was this next question? How do you balance being in the spotlight and playing more of the supporting role through your improv approach? How do you set up others for the spotlight? This is actually a good question. I didn't talk about focus. Focus is important. You aren't always the person in the spotlight, right? For arc 3, V had the spotlight a lot. And I had to be prepared for the spotlight. I had to know, okay, V is the deal here. And I didn't always know exactly how I was going to solve the problem. Uh, but I had to be the one. I had to do yes and to myself. And then my ensemble around me supported me in that, you know? And then there are moments where I, as V, I know I'm not the center of this scene. My job is to be there, listen, and if there is a moment for me to contribute something productive, a yes and that will further the drama or the comedy of that moment, okay, I'm in it. When Oka was going after V for a sample of V's blood, I saw what C was trying to do immediately, and I'm like, yes, and okay. And we immediately know what the shtick we're doing is. The thing between Manaya and V last episode, I immediately saw what Lyra was trying to do, and I was like, yes, and so, you know, you just have to be prepared, and that you got to bring your most prepared self. You have to know these things about what you want, and then be prepared to like, okay, this isn't my scene, this isn't my episode, this isn't my moment to shine, and that's okay. I will do whatever I have to do to support them. And then if and somehow in that I get thrust into the spotlight, I have to be ready. You just have to be ready. It's preparation and it's knowing what your character wants and needs to do. Um, let's see. There's one. There's a question about super objective of a DM's character or NPC. Let's get to that in a moment. I just want this last question. If V had gotten a big profit, what would she buy pay for first? She would have wasted it on like a boat or something, and then she would have sunk. V's not good with money. I started the campaign with 0 gold. I lied and cheated and stole money in the beginning, the first arc, because of necessity. I literally started the campaign with 0. So it was imperative that V steal or earn or do whatever she had to as quickly as possible. And it's kind of written into her lore. I mean, V has pulled off all the possible heists, not all the possible heists, but a lot of heists in her 110 years of life. And there's got to be a reason she has nothing to show for it. So if she's done all of this stuff and has nothing to show for it, she's got to be pretty bad with the money. Or, she's got a lot of bounties on her head. It's not impossible to say that she would have stolen money from someone only to encounter another group of mercenaries or shady people who then she has to pay off so that they leave her alone instead of killing her. So I think if V had gotten a big profit, she wouldn't have seen it for very long at all. Let's see. Connie, if you want to come on and all and talk about this super objective of a DM character or NPC in comparison, because I'll just say from my perspective before I throw it over to Connie is that I have the fortunate place of just having to worry about my character and V's wants and desires and what mine as a player is, as opposed to understanding the entire world of Endake and figuring out how all the NPCs fit into that realm. So if Connie, if you have anything you would like to really speak to on that, I'd love to hear it. Check. Can you hear Connie right now?
Okay. Hold on. There we go. Here I am. Hi, people.
Perfect.
Here's Connie. You can hear me now. So great question. Just to repeat it, is the super objective of a DM character / NPC handled differently from a PC? Example, the NPC wants to defeat the party, but maybe there's a narrative objective that they don't succeed or they can't succeed. That's a really good question. I would say I run my NPCs like real people, right? Each of them has an objective, either in the scene or if they're a more major NPC in the overall arc, or series of arcs, right? I can say with confidence, without spoiling too much, Adam has a super objective, right? Dr. Aluso has a super objective. The president of the URL has a super objective, or maybe two, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't let them not succeed. It's up to the PCs to stop them, if and when the PCs learn about their super objective, right? The assassin's super objective, for Arc 4, as we learned in like Arc 4 episode 3 or something, is to kill the freaking Emperor, right? Like to the point where there's a prophecy, in place that is gonna happen, a vision, right? So it's up to my player characters and my players, to figure out a way forward from that. And if they're, if they don't, I trust this group, and I really like the choices that this table has done so far. But if my table were, I think, less engaged with the story, or if they were just like doing things that don't make sense, then yeah, that Emperor's gonna get murked because they're not engaging with the NPCs in a way that feels, very attentive to the needs of the story. So long story short, yes. Especially my major NPCs all have what, Erica has brought up very intelligently, super objectives. Whether or not they succeed is largely up to the PCs, and it's important for me to make the success or failure of their objectives dependent on the PC's actions or inaction, because otherwise I'm taking player agency away, right? If the NPCs were gonna succeed no matter what, that's kind of railroady, and there's a time and place for that. Right? Like I can see like situations where that could be possible, right? For example, I spoke about this during my previous Professor Chung's during my personal Patreon, but if you didn't tune in for that, I think there's a weird amount of crossover for people in this chat and that one though. But the long story short is, the Paragon Killer, I spoke with the Hound behind the scenes, basically being like, y'all are gonna come onto the scene where the Paragon Killer is about to like straight up murder Oka, and they're gonna run away, and I need them to get away because if you capture them or kill them, it's gonna like completely unhinge what I have planned for the main campaign, so please don't do that. And my players were like, sure, great, we can do that, right? Like, we can respect that railroad, like that's fine with us, etc., etc. But because I discussed it with my players beforehand, they were okay with me, with, I guess, the mini objective of the scene for the Paragon Killer, which is to get away, for that to succeed, right? But the and because that mini objective was intact, the super objective could remain as well. Because if the Paragon Killer were to be captured or killed by the Hounds in that instance, I, would have been hugely thrown for a loop, I think, for the back half of Arc 4. And I was just like, if this weren't a streamed game, would I have allowed it? Yes. Almost definitely. But because this is a streamed game, I think where the cohesion of the narrative and the satisfying way that the story can play out is more important than all players getting to do everything all the time. That's why I made that decision. So I hope that like illuminates some of my, thought processes and my approach to building super objectives and tactics for NPCs. Yeah, so I'm gonna pass the things back to Erica now, who has done a great job just listening. So go ahead.
Yeah, actually, listening to Connie right there made me think of a thing, and this will probably be like, I'm wrapping up here, there's a point that I want to make about like V does a lot of chaotic things, right? Connie, I'm sure can attest, like be like, what do you want to do, Erica? What are you trying to do, Erica? But I want to say that when we were discussing, like in our session, we had like a -1 and 0, which Connie's talked about in different lectures. It was important to me in the discussion that I wanted V to be who V was, but I didn't want V to make the rest of the table feel like there was too much chaos, or that V would just like stop the action. So everything I do as V, no matter how seemingly chaotic it is, it's still rooted in her objectives. Example, and I was thinking about this while Connie was talking, which is why I wanted to talk about it. The whole thing in Arc 1 with the chrysalis. When V walked up to the person sort of preaching about the chrysalis, I had no idea what I was going to do, but I know that V is always looking for an opportunity to make some money. So V approaching them and going along with the story and trying to convince this person who, from V's perspective, this person talking about the chrysalis is bizarre. Like, what they're saying can't be true. V was already skeptical of them on that guard. But V thought to herself, if I act like I'm part of this, if I simply use some magic to seem like I'm in tune with whatever this power that the chrysalis possesses, maybe I can gain a foot up and maybe make a profit by literally becoming a prophet of a cult. But that did get V some more information, which eventually she went to the orphanage, she went to the headquarters of the chrysalis, and everything I did in that moment, and all of that, everything from like having to deal with this magical contract, which I knew this is a trap, do not sign this contract. So I improvised this giant magic spree of chaos so that V would not have to sign on the dotted line, because I didn't want to end up like anybody else who signs on the dotted line. So then I would have an excuse to like go rest because I was exhausted from all this magic. So then I could maybe sneak away and see what's going on. And Connie had described this locked door. So I was like, well, I want to get to that locked door. And, everything from there led to V learning a lot of information about the chrysalis, getting to meet Adam and developing a relationship, starting a relationship. And when V realized that relationship probably is not one that she feels comfortable engaging in, nothing like a good fireball. Who doesn't love a good fireball to try to get out of that situation? I didn't expect the fireball to work, but I thought it was a good message to Adam where V stood on the situation. So the most random of events is me thinking ahead as V and thinking about what does V want and how is she going to get it, and I sometimes start talking and doing things without knowing exactly what I'm going to do, but I have enough sense of what V's trying to accomplish so that in the moment I'm going to do this, because in the end, V was really, everything with the chrysalis was about V getting information. That whole thing was just V trying to get information so that she can get ahead and maybe make a profit. And so that is like the best, I think, metaphor. That's not even a metaphor because that's really what happened. That's just the best illustration I have, I think, for the way that I played it. And then there's a lot of listening between me and Connie, and in a lot of conflict, because Connie, my favorite part about playing with Connie is I will throw a giant proposal. Connie will say yes and throw in the giant roadblock and be like, all right, Erica, deal with this one. And then I got to deal with this. So, yeah, that's it really. That's the dealio. I really, if you take just all those ingredients and boil it together, I think you'll have yourself some good improv. A lot of people are scared of improv, and this is what I learned about acting method. Acting methods are just ways of finding a back door to being able to be comfortable and portray life on a stage, really. Everything, some acting methods are about distracting your cortex so that you're living in a place of instinct. I always want to be in a place of instinct, and I want to be working with partners who are really bringing it so that I can really bring it and we can push each other. And that's where exciting drama or comedy happens, is when we're both just entering the stage, finding the game and saying like, all right, I want this, you want that, bring it. And I love that attitude. Not everyone responds to that attitude, but that's kind of, I want that attitude, but with like joy, compassion, and love for each other. That's some of my deeper thoughts on performing. Anyway, I think that's really about it. I mean, we've been talking for 45 minutes. I feel like Grandma Erica needs to go to bed.
Go get your nappies on, Grandma Erica. You did good, Grandma Erica. Go drink your nap time tea.
I'm good. Go. All right. Is there anything else, Connie? We need, like, we've got another episode coming this Saturday, Transplanar, 3 p.m. Central, like we do. Is there any sort of announcement? We do have a big announcement. We actually have a big announcement tomorrow, right?
A big announcement. Keep your eyes peeled on the Twitter. We'll also be announcing it, of course, in our Discord server. We have a huge, very exciting announcement on December 1st that we can't wait to share with all of you and with our greater Transplanar fan community at large. But yeah, Erica, without spoiling anything, one word to give our patrons a special teaser of what that announcement might be.
The one
to wrap
word
this up
has got to be epic.
Okay.
Epic.
Yeah. Epic. That's a great word. And my word will be keeper. And that's all. And I'm not going to say anything else about it. Epic and keeper. All right, Erica, give us a sign off and I'll take us out.
All right, everybody. I have been Erica. You can find me, Erica New Girl, everywhere you need to find me. We are Transplanar RPG, and we love you all so much. And have a good night. In the words of one Connie, Bishu, Ishu, Bishu, Rishu.